So the New York Post editorial board accusing the federal government of using social media giants to censor Americans who oppose the president's policies. Vivek Ramaswamy is a biotech entrepreneur and the author of a great book, best-selling book, Woke Incorporated. And he is here now. Let me just read to you a little bit more from the New York Post, saying that for sure the net is full of loons promoting utter idiocy as supposed fact. But the way to counter misinformation isn't censorship, and it's certainly not having the feds lean on social media firms to do the censoring. The Post has been targeted repeatedly by social media for solid, factual reporting. We can only think such outrages would get worse if Facebook and companies start trying to enforce some government version of the truth. Vivek, your thoughts?
Well, look, I agree with them that the right answer to bad speech isn't less speech, it is more speech. But the more precise issue here is the government coordination with these social media companies. Because conventional wisdom, Dana, says that if you're a social media company, you're a private company, you're free to decide what does and doesn't show up on your website. And that's true when you're actually acting as a private company. But what we are seeing today is that these companies are coordinating directly with the White House, taking instruction from the federal government, the party in power, to decide what speech goes and what speech doesn't. And what I say is that if it is state action in disguise, then the Constitution still applies. These companies ought to be bound by the First Amendment when they're taking and doing the bidding of the state.
Shana Chappell was writing on Facebook. He's talking about these 13 service members dead. It says, seems Instagram took it upon themselves to delete my account due to Biden's negligence, ignorance, and him being a traitor. I'm going to assume that Facebook is going to delete me next. Instagram, you cannot silence me. You deleted my account because my son's blood is on Biden's hands. 13 heroes' blood is on Biden's hands. On it goes. You had the story over the weekend about GoDaddy deleting an account in Texas based on the abortion law that was passed down there. If they want, they have you where they've got you to either give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on anything you write or say or post.
Exactly. I mean, George Orwell is rolling in his grave. We live in a country where you're supposed to be able to criticize the people in power. That is what freedom means. And yet here's a woman whose son died on a humanitarian mission in Kabul and blames the president of the United States and is silenced by Instagram for doing it. But here's what George Orwell didn't imagine. He thought it would be government directly doing the censorship. And what neither our founding fathers nor George Orwell ever imagined was that they would be delegating their dirty work to private companies to do through the back door what the government cannot directly do.
And is that what you get at then in Woke Incorporated, your book? Because basically you're saying that it's not the government doing it. It's government in coordination, or like, hey, could you check on this for me? And then the corporations are all too willing to do it?
Exactly. It's mutual back scratching. And that's crony capitalism 2.0. Very different than 1.0, where right now, this is now a new hybrid of big government and big business that I think is the real threat to individual liberty today. Back in 1980, it might have been big government alone. Today, it's not just big government. That's just half the story. It is this new hybrid of big government and big business that's far more powerful because each can do what the other cannot. And that's what we're seeing foremost in Silicon Valley.
To her point, then, what she's suggesting, it's kind of a wink and a nod.
Of course it is. It's more than a wink and a nod.
You're not going to follow a paper trail here. It's just like, hey, man, we got you covered on this.
Exactly. But they're responding to threats. So if you listen carefully, Democrats in Congress are saying we're going to come after you and break you up unless you take down misinformation and hate speech, by the way, as we, the party in power, define it. But now it's not even just a wink and a nod. They're directly coordinating with the Surgeon General. They're directly coordinating with the White House. Jen Psaki is boasting about it in her press conference.
It is actually interesting. I've heard from some of the social media companies, like when conservatives complain, they're like, okay, valid complaint, right? And they deleted that woman's account, the grieving mother. They said it was a mistake. But they say is that the calls from the left to try to punish their political opponents through social media companies is even stronger than the complaints that conservatives make about censorship.
That's right. And every time they're pressed with a case that's so egregious, here a grieving mother of a veteran in the United States, a young kid who died in the line of duty, then they step back and say, oh, that was a mistake. Just like they said for Hunter Biden's laptop story, just like they said when they actually took down Ron Paul's account last year, which I thought was an offensive use of power as well. When it's too far in one direction, they say, oh, it was just a mistake. Note that all of the mistakes are on one side of the political spectrum. But the rest of the time, they're actually kowtowing to the left that ultimately says, we're going to break you up, we're going to regulate you, unless you take down the speech that we don't want to see.
How do you see this unravel? How does this end?
Yeah, so the way this ends is...
How do we come out of this?
It's really complicated. Some people say repeal Section 230. Well, guess what? That might have been a good idea 15, 20 years ago. Today, it's actually going to strengthen the behemoths. Yeah. Some people say antitrust law. I don't want the biggest companies in the world to be Chinese. I want them to be American. I think the right way out is reform Section 230 to say that you can't have it both ways. Either you get this special form of federal immunity and you're bound by the Constitution just like the federal government, or you get to be a private company, but you don't get this special form of federal immunity from the government. Those are the kinds of solutions that I advance in the book.
Book's great, and it did very well, right? New York Times bestseller, number 2, I think.
Hardback.
As a debut.
Hardcover now, too. So, Vivek, great to see you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming back.
It's interesting. It takes a while to write a book, and it's like it's coming out at just the right time as everybody's talking about this.
Well, thank you very much, Dana. Appreciate that.
Thanks for being here.